I apologize. We've been having quite a bit of issue with our technology lately, so I apologize for the delay as I work to try to get that set up. But let's focus on God's Word now. So now Jesus was in great anguish with the Spirit, and he exclaimed, "The truth is, one of you will betray me." The disciples looked at each other, wondering whom he could mean. One of Jesus' disciples, the one Jesus loved, was sitting next to Jesus at the table. Simon Peter motioned to him to ask who would do this terrible thing. So leaning toward Jesus, he asked, "Lord, who is it?" And Jesus said, "It is the one whom I give the bread dipped in the sauce." And then he dipped it, and he gave it to Judas, son of Simon Iscariot. As soon as Judas had eaten the bread, Satan entered into him. Then Jesus told him, "Hurry, do it now." None of the others at the table knew what Jesus meant. Since Judas was their treasurer, some thought that Jesus was telling him to go and pay for food or to go and give some money to the poor. So Judas left at once, going out into the night. So let's just start by resetting the scene one more time. We talked last week, and in fact, I may post a video of what that looked like. I mentioned the problems with technology. Apparently, I'm doing a little dance on stage because of the choppiness and the sound just loops. So it's kind of funny. Maybe I should enter it in America's Funniest Videos. I don't know. So we talked last week about what's happening and what's taking place. So they're in this room. They're sitting down. Now, when they're sitting down at the table, do they pull up their chairs? Or they, in our fellowship hall, we've got the fold-out chairs, and we fold those out, and we sit down nice and proper and get ready for our meal, right? Remember the discussion that we had about the significance of Jesus washing the feet, which I went into quite detail about the stinkiness and gunkiness of the feet. But the significance of that is the way that they would recline at the table, on their left side with their feet kind of back, so they're kind of stacked up like it. So your feet are super close to the person next to you. Remember, it's kind of a little, like this, with your feet kind of held back a little. But the next guy's like right here. You got this nice cushion. You're leaning on the table and you're eating. So they're all along this table doing that. Now, it's really, really easy for the person that's here or the person that's here to hear what you're saying. So there's quite a bit of significance for John to state here that Jesus exclaimed. So he makes this statement, "One of you is going to betray me." He makes this statement loud enough to make sure that everybody could hear in the midst of this dinner, right? So they're sitting there eating, they're sitting there having conversation, people are talking amongst themselves. You know what it sounds like when you have a bunch of small conversations going on, right? At this point, the disciples have witnessed and heard Jesus talk about what it means to wash the feet. They saw him do it, then he commanded them to do the same type of thing. He commanded them to be servants in this way, to take themselves from their position and remove what that means and put them down here, to serve and to take care of a basic need. And he says, "Go and do this." So at this point, as he's sitting there, as he's thinking about this, as they're sitting there talking about this, they're talking about, wow, okay, so this is deep. So he wants us, number one, to touch stinky feet. He wants us to lower ourselves to the lowest of the low servant, to stand at the doorway as people come in and to take and remove the grime from the road, to refresh them. He wants us to perform this task. Wow, what does that look like? What's that? As they're discussing this, as they're thinking about this, and they're having conversations side by side with one another. Did you hear what he wants us to do? Can you believe that? As they're contemplating, this is the man that we followed around for years. We've listened to his teaching. We've sat with him, and we've eaten with him. We've prayed with him. We've slept with him. We've followed his every word. And still, he comes up with this stuff that just amazes us. As they're having this discussion, Jesus exclaims over them loudly so that all of them can hear him. He says, "One of you is going to betray me." Well, you think they were talking loud before. If they were discussing with some confusion about what he was talking about, if they were amazed at what he had been telling them as he showed the example of washing their feet, now they're really talking. What is he talking about? Well, I know it's not me, because I would never betray Jesus. So is it going to be, no, I just can't see. Is it going to be this one? Is it John? No, it could be John, because he's right there. Is Peter? No, probably not Peter. As they're discussing this, as they're trying to figure out what's he talking about, we have followed him. We know these guys. Because as we're sitting here, as we're sitting at his feet, as we're conversing with him, as we're eating with him, as we're worshiping with him, as we're hearing and hanging on his every word, all of these guys have been there. Every single one of them has been there. Every one of them is trusted, is taken care of. Every one of them is loved. Each and every one of us does our part. What is he talking about? So, Simon Peter motions. Could you just ask him what he's talking about? And so the person sitting at his right leans back so that he's facing into Jesus. And he says to him, "Who's going to do that? Who would do such a thing?" Christ responds to him, "The person that takes this bread." And so he dips it and he hands it to Judas. Now, there's a couple of different things. Number one, in order for him to be able to hand it straight to Judas, what does that mean about Judas's position on the table? He's pretty close. He's really close. He's within reach. He's well within reach of him. And there is kind of a certain hierarchy to how people sit. There's the main person is on a nice large cushion, and then immediately to the right, there's, in this case, the one who Jesus loved. Now, it doesn't mean that he didn't love everybody else. Most people believe that it's an alliteration to John, specifically. John was the youngest of the disciples. And of course, it is John who is writing this. It's believed to be the same John who has written down this gospel, which, of course, was written later than the other gospels. So there is belief that it's actually John who was sitting there just to his right, that leaned back into him and said, who's going to do this? But Judas, we know, is trusted. We know Judas is trusted because Judas held the purse strings. He had the money. Judas was the treasurer of the group, right? Now, I don't know about you. Personally, it's never been my policy to have somebody control my money who I don't like, who doesn't like me. I've never let somebody control my money when they hate me. Do you guys do that? Do you just let somebody else control how your finances? I'm not sure. I don't think any of us here really has like a financial advisor that holds all our money and makes all the purchases without our knowledge. Okay, just polling the audience, just finding out for sure. I almost became one. Funny story. Anyway, so I'll tell that one later. But I'll tell it now. Because the whole industry of being a financial planner is literally integrating yourselves into your clients' lives. Spending any time that you can, day or night, going to events with them, becoming part of their daily routine so you understand their spending habits, you understand where their income comes from, how they like to spend it, what their needs are, what their wants are, what their desires. And the whole idea of financial planning is to come along and to tweak those things so that they can do what they want to do and have enough to do it again later on. So the whole idea of financial planning is getting in close, getting in tight with the people that you're working with, right? Understanding what their wants, needs, and desires so you can take care of it. Then after I interviewed for it, I decided that I didn't want to do that because what I would be doing is getting in close so I could take their money so the company that I worked for would make extra money off of it. And that's what the whole idea was. So kind of ties into what's going on here, what we have here. Judas is the one that is trusted. Judas, for the last 3 years, has spent his life with Jesus. He has roamed around. He's been taking care of the needs of the group, of the disciples of Christ, making sure that they have a room to be in right now. Making the disbursements, paying out the monies where they need to be paid out, making sure that if they were giving to the poor, that was taken care of, making sure that everything that they had was put to where it needed to be. Now, we were given clue earlier, if you remember just a couple weeks ago, Josh was talking about the perfume and the anointing of Jesus with the perfume, of it being wasted. And who was it that spoke up and said that it was being wasted? It was Judas. As you become involved with taking care of financial needs and your focus becomes about money, when you see something happening that directly affects your pocket, your purse, that's what comes to mind. So Judas had this come to mind then, and he was already on the path. He was already on the path. Judas now is being pointed out as the one who would betray Jesus. So let's look at a couple of different elements here. So Judas, of course, is one of the 12. He's been with Jesus for upwards of 3 years. He's on a daily basis heard the words of Jesus. He's heard his preaching. He's seen the miracles. He's just witnessed Christ going through and washing their feet, washing off the dirt of the road. He's heard Jesus tell them that they should be doing the same type of thing. Jesus washed even Judas's feet, knowing what he knew, knowing what was going to take place. Do you think that Jesus hated Judas? Do you think that there was a relationship where it's like, I know that guy, but I don't trust that guy? Christ knew his heart. Christ knew who Judas was. Christ loved Judas not because of, but without regard of what was going to take place. Something that's very hard for us to think about, for us to do. I mean, the closest we get is keep your enemies closer, right? Keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. But that doesn't mean that we trust them. It doesn't mean that we love them, or that we worry about their needs, or we make sure that they're taken care of, or even wash their feet. It's very difficult, especially in today's society, to even fathom that knowing what he knew, knowing the very heart of this person that's in his midst, that he could still love him. That he would still embrace him. Not only embrace him, but he trusts him so implicitly that he knows without a doubt that he's about to be betrayed by him. To have that knowledge of somebody for your entire relationship, yet still not balk at it, not hold yourself back, to pour yourself so fully into that person, to have the love of that person, to care about who they are. It's something that is so hard for us to fathom. Having that. As we get so caught up in taking care of ourselves, as we understand a subverted version of what love is, as we have to struggle to understand what it means when it says in James to consider it joy when you encounter trials. How can you have joy when you're in trials? We have here the true definition of what these things are. We have the true definition of what love is. It's not that love doesn't care about what's taking place. Love doesn't care that you're going to be betrayed. Love doesn't care that you're going to be beaten down. Love doesn't care that you're going to have to sacrifice for your person that you've poured your life into. It's that love has no regard for those things. The situation that you find yourself in, the circumstances that are surrounding you, don't matter. They don't change who you are. Christ doesn't react to the environment that he finds himself in. He never lets it alter what he does, what he talks about, what he shares. He shares these things despite of what's going on around him, without regard to what's going on around him. It doesn't change who he is or what he has to do. Because he has the strength to be who he is in all of these situations, everything falls right into line. Everything follows exactly what the Father said would happen. We have the picture of Judas, who is beloved, who is trusted, who has the money. You have the other disciples sitting around trying to figure out who's going to betray this man. Why would he say such a thing? It can't be any of us. And then you have the question being asked, who is it? It will be the one that I give this bread to. Now the question would be, question that's probably most asked, or I had trouble, I know, wrapping my mind around it, was how is it that they didn't hear this, right? How is it that the other disciples aren't going, ha ha, it's Judas, look at that, he just gave him the bread. Remember how they're sitting? Remember how they, kind of in a line here, they're having discussion, they're in their minds, with their words, they're trying to figure out who Jesus is talking about. There's really only one person that heard him. And that was the one that asked the question. It doesn't say that Jesus exclaimed, "The person who takes this bread will betray me." But he answered the question. The question would be asked, how can Judas sit there and take the bread and eat it knowing that Jesus said this? Right? Wouldn't he be aware of that, right? There's no indication that he even heard what Christ's response was. He took the bread and he ate it. And at that point, Satan entered him. At this point, he becomes overcame. At this point, some would say he became possessed with what he needed to do. He has one thing that's on his mind, and it's not that I don't love Jesus. It's, what can I get for Jesus? He goes out into the night and he walks 2 miles from Bethany to Jerusalem. He's got a meeting to get to. So what kind of person does that? Is that something that we look upon ourselves and we say, would I do that? Do we compare ourselves to Judas, wondering, am I going to turn my back for my own gain? Is this man dangerous? Should I get what I can and get out? Should I take care of my own needs, my own wants? I mean, I've been with this guy for 3 years. And what have I got out of it? He lets me carry around his money. Oftentimes we're sleeping in the wilderness. We're walking all over the place. And he keeps going on and on and on about giving things to the poor, putting other people before yourself, taking care of their needs, about how his Father sent him. I would say that in this day and age, that's something that we're primed for from birth. I hate to harp on it, but on a daily basis, we're told to take care of ourselves and our own needs. In fact, we're told that if we don't do that, no one's going to do it for you. The only thing to do in life is to look out for numero uno. For most people, that's the only Spanish they know. Take care of yourself. You got to advocate for yourself. I can't even count the number of times in the past week alone that I have been told that I need to advocate for myself at work. Because I do great things. God has blessed me with the ability to make technology work. Not always here. But He's blessed me with the ability to do this. And I'm told on a regular basis, well, James, you need to advocate for yourself. You should be doing this instead. You should be heading up your own department. You should be recognized this way. Why? It's hard for people to understand. It's hard for those that are my supervisors, those that are my acquaintances at work. It's hard for them to understand why that's not taking place. Because they're so inundated with the thought process that you need to do this. You need to take care of yourself. You need to fight for every inch that you can get. That's what we're told. That's what we're told in movies. That's what we're told in song. If you think about it, every single song you've ever heard is all about getting something, getting that woman, relieving your pain, taking care of yourself. How I wish that I had this girl. Oh, I want to do these things. I had to search so hard last week for a movie that even came close to the type of servant leadership that Christ was showing. I remarked how normally it's so easy for me to find satire in something as simple as a cartoon like South Park that fits it. But even South Park didn't even take the time to mock the servanthood that Jesus shows. Our lives are inundated with these messages that we, in and of ourselves, are all that there is. So since we're all that there is, we're the only things that can take care of this. We're inundated with the fact that we're not connected. Right? The purpose of growing up is to get out of your parents' house and they practically kick you out. The purpose of getting kicked out of the house is so you could learn how to earn your own way. The purpose of learning to earn your own way is so that you can be self-sufficient and take care of all of your needs. When I was growing up, I heard all about these people that have backpacked across Europe to discover who they are so they can take care of their needs. How they spent time solitarily so they can understand who they are as a person. And now that I know who I am as a person, I can protect that. There's no problem with understanding who you are. The problem is when you start to think that you're who you are all alone. This past couple of weeks, the Vista Bridge has been in the news repeatedly because people have a habit of jumping off of it. They've interviewed a lawyer from a law firm that sits right across from the bridge and has watched this happen a couple times. They've talked about the steps that they're going to take to end any suicide attempts from the bridge. They already have plaques up there right next to the sidewalks that talk about suicide prevention hotlines. And since that's not working, what they're going to do right now is they will have someone stationed on the bridge 24/7 to talk you down. They're not going to grab you. They're not going to prevent you from jumping physically, but they will stand there and they will talk to you and try to get you out of yourself. And eventually, in about a month, they're going to have barriers put up that go straight up and curve in so that you can't jump out from the bridge. They're doing all of this to prevent on the back end, at the last hour, people jumping off of this bridge. So it's on people's minds. But they never stop to try to understand where the root of this comes from. Why do we have so many people that are feeling these thoughts that think that everything is hopeless and the only thing that they can do is jump off a bridge? Starts when they're really young. Starts within the family. It starts with the entertainment that they watch, from the cartoons that they frequent, the video games that they play, the friends that they hang out with. Whenever anybody dies, what do you hear? Oh, but they were such a good kid. They immediately vilify any police officers that were trying to protect themselves when this really good kid was attacking them. We even extend that to our pets, right? Oh, it's not my dog's fault. I mean, my dog is an angel. The police should never have shot him for being attacked by him. You hear outcries. In Los Angeles, there was a man who was blaring music out of his rental car, walking his pit bull right next to it, while the police were surrounding a house to take down an arms dealer. When the police came over to ask him to turn down the music, he refused to do it because he's had several run-ins with those cops and he was going to film their every need and he didn't need to worry about it. So he puts the dog in the car with the windows fully down, finally turns down the music, and the police take him into custody. As they're doing this, the dog starts to bark, jumps out the open windows, and openly attacks the police officers. One of them shoots the dog, and the dog unfortunately dies. Every single comment on the story, every single piece of coverage that you can find, I can't believe the police killed that dog. We care so much about pets. We care so much about people after they're gone. We never take the time to love them while they're here, to be connected to them while they're here, to have a relationship without regard of what they're going to do. To love them down to the very heart of who they are. When people understand that kind of love, when they get into that kind of connectedness, they don't go jump off the Vista Bridge. Christ exhibits a love beyond the bounds of what we can fully understand. That's what we're called to do. As Jesus takes care of those around him at the end of his life, as he knows that his hour draws close, he's outpouring on those around him. As he sees the events that are about to take place, as he understands what's going to take place, as he does nothing to prevent that taking place, you can see in every ounce the love that he has for not only the disciples that are around him, but the love that he had for us, even at that moment. To not run away, to not avoid, but to boldly embrace what was about to take place. So our task is to not try to understand that love, but just to exhibit that love. To take care of the needs of the ones that have been given to us. Not worried about what they're going to do for us. Not worried about our reward. Not worried about our 30 pieces of silver. But to love them, to care for them, to take care of their needs, without regard to what we're going to get in return. It's all about your intent. There's two ways to look in relationship. What can I do to get something out of this relationship? And what can I do to make sure they get something out of this relationship? That second question is the most important. And that's what Christ exhibits here. Let's take the opportunity to pray. Lord, as we take the opportunity to read from what your servant John has written down, as we look at these moments just before all of this pain and hate is heaped upon your Son, as we take the opportunity to learn more about who Judas was, to learn more about who John was, and Peter, and James, and just, Lord, we just pray that you would allow us the opportunity to be proper reflections of the light that your Son is in the world, that we would have the opportunity to shower those around us with love, to take care of their needs. Lord, I thank you for the assurance that we have in even what you've shown us within the past week. Our needs are always taken care of appropriately. When we understand that by relying on the only relationship that will never let us down, when we understand that only by living by the example that your Son has shown us can we accomplish what has been set before us, the task that you have given us. Lord, I would pray that we would have numerous opportunities to just strengthen our relationship with each other. We would have numerous opportunities to strengthen our relationship with you, and by those interactions, with the love that is shown, that we would be a powerful light shining into the darkness. I just pray for the seeds that will be planted by the love that we show for each other, the love that we show for you. I pray that your Spirit would just go out and grow those seeds, Lord, so that those that we come in contact, those that see the light of that love, can experience the true love of a relationship with you. So as we take this opportunity to leave here, as we participate in tasks, as we celebrate days of birth, as we go out into our lives, to our works, as we spend times with our family, in all of these things, in all of them, may we remember who you are and the relationship you want to have with us without regard to what we will do. Thank you for your love. In your Son's name, amen. All right, men, time for prayer.